minerals are all very, very critical. So we've got positive charges, negative charges, and then we've got beneficial minerals. So what agriculture will tell us is we got to have 17 essential minerals to grow plants. Okay? If we don't have one of those minerals, the plants aren't going to make it. They're not going to function right. Oh, thank you. And so as we start looking at these minerals, okay, we've got trace minerals here and all of these minerals down here that we really haven't studied. We know that some of them play a very important biological role, but let's just deal with our 17 essential minerals to start with a little bit right now. Okay, what is the most important mineral to grow plants with?
Manganese.
Okay, we got manganese. Okay, so I've heard manganese. Did I hear zinc?
Zinc, copper,
chloride. Okay, got to have a little chloride in there. We do. Do you guys ever buy nitrogen? Oh, I forgot that one. Okay, nitrogen. You guys ever have to buy phosphate?
Well, NPK are your most important ones.
Okay, so how many would agree that these are the most important ones? Mike? Okay. Peter? Okay. Great. We're going to have lots of fun ruining your day here. Okay? True. Okay, here we go. Let's talk about this. Okay, so when I take a plant and I just look at it, all right, and I take its weight, okay, 45% of my plant's dry matter weight is carbon. Son of a gun. Let's see. Oh. Guess what? We missed that one. Another 45% of my plant is oxygen. Okay, so how many of you guys buy oxygen and carbon from your co-op? Those are really interesting trucks when you see them go down the road. Peter?
It comes from our good Lord.
And then I got hydrogen. How much hydrogen have I got? 6%. Okay? So right now I've got at least 96% of my plant's dry matter weight comes from something I can't buy. Now, nitrogen, right here. How much of our atmosphere is nitrogen? Dave is going to give you $100 if you get this right.
85%.
You almost lost $100, Dave. N is 79%. Okay? Our oxygen is only 21%. Okay? So we have all this wonderful nitrogen sitting above every acre out there. All right? Now, we can either buy nitrogen or we can figure out how to harvest nitrogen. So when you guys buy alfalfa, do you put nitrogen on it? Shouldn't.
It makes its own nitrogen.
Makes its own nitrogen. How does it do that? Has it got a special hip? How does it do that? George?
It's natural.
What's that?
Natural.
That is very natural.
It takes it out of the air, it just grabs it and puts it in.
Okay. God is a little tiny bit more detailed than that. Dave, you don't know. All right? Rhizobium, when you get your alfalfa seed and your lentils and your chickpeas, they should be inoculated with a rhizobium type. Now, rhizobium are these cute little guys. They're nitrogen-fixing bacteria. Okay, again, nitrogen in the air is in O2. Plant can't use O2. Oxygen, nitrogen is N2, I'm sorry. Oxygen is O2. Plants can't use it. It's not in the right form. But that microbe can take the N2 and put it into a nitrite, a nitrate, and ammonia. And he has the genetic coding, the intelligence, to alter the compound. So it's the microbe that takes it out of the air, which is in the soil. That's why if you have compacted soil that you can't get air down into, you get less nitrogen fixation on your legumes. Okay? It's the microbe that does this. Okay? So I can either buy nitrogen or I can go harvest it from the atmosphere. And last I checked, no one had to write a nitrogen check for atmospheric nitrogen. It kind of came free. We just got to figure out how to harvest it, okay? Then I have my other, so these four can be gases, they're 97.5%. So magnesium, potassium, calcium, sulfur, phosphate make up my other 2% of my plant's dry matter weight. Okay? Now, this will vary a little bit right here depending on the type of plant that you're growing. Legumes can be a little bit higher, okay? And other non-legumes will be a little bit lower, okay? So my nitrogen content, high protein plants will have a little bit more nitrogen in them. They have to, okay? Then these other elements down here make up 2% more. So I have 9 elements that are running 99.5% of my plant's dry matter weight. And what I will tell you, this is structure. Okay? These are roots, stems, leaves, branches. It's all structure. I have minerals that build structure. So, when you guys buy a tractor, last I checked, you got tires, you got a fancy seat, you got series radio, GPS, and a lot of metal. A tractor is 100% structure. Am I right? So I got a 50,000 pound tractor and it's solid. I got material in that baby. How much fuel, if we don't have any fuel in it, what does my structure do? Do you have to have 50,000 pounds of fuel to run your 50,000 pound tractor? Not last I checked. Gas tanks usually aren't as big as the tractors. Okay? You have to have a little bit of fuel to run your tractor. Without the fuel, your tractor is just dead structure. Okay? Plants work very much the same way. Now let's go back and talk about what happens here on our plant nutrition. Carbon, 45% of your plant's dry matter weight. Where does carbon come from?
Minerals. From your residue.
Okay, we're getting close. Residue said 1, soil, minerals, okay.
Some from the atmosphere, probably.
Some. Okay. Now see, God is really smart here. What do you think weighs more? Okay. O2 or CO2? Which is heavier? O2? Okay, time out. We got to go back. CO2. CO2 is heavier than O2. Okay?
Plants give off carbon monoxide.
Dave, is that worth $100? No. Oh, you missed it. Okay. They take, there we go. Okay, the intake is, this is going in, this is coming out. Okay? But where does carbon come from? Okay, what do we take in? Bingo. That's worth
$200.
$200. What do we give out?
Carbon dioxide.
There we go. We produce this because we are aerobic little creatures, right? Your beneficial soil biology are also aerobes. So what are they producing? You know, if they're breathing in oxygen and exhaling what? CO2. Now, here's your options, guys. You can do this. Grow, you little buggers. Or you can employ the soil microorganisms to do this for you. And what they're going to do is they're going to produce that carbon dioxide as they metabolize minerals, as they metabolize organic matter, as they utilize root exudates. Your carbon dioxide is coming from your microbes. Now, there's some really smart Russians. Okay, they're not all bad. Okay? Krishilnikov, what's that?
If they don't collude with us.
Yeah, if they don't mess with our presidency elections, we'd be just fine. Right here, these guys came in and compiled some research from the late 1800s until the early 1900s. This book, called Soil Microorganisms in Higher Plants, is available on the internet. You just have to buy 500 pages of paper to print it out. Okay? It's well worth reading. But what they talk about is, this is probably the most definitive book published on the interaction between soil microbes and higher plants. And they did this research when research was real research and not bought and paid for research, on what plants did in relation to soil microorganisms. And what they're saying is the most important component in the soil atmosphere is carbon dioxide. This is the decomposition of organic matter. Okay, and basically what it's saying, the formation of carbon dioxide depends to a large degree on the microbial metabolism. That's these guys living and working. Everything that favors the growth of microorganisms increases CO2. So if I want to grow 200 bushel wheat, it isn't driven by NPK. It is driven by CO2 because 90% of your plant's dry matter weight is going to be coming from carbon and oxygen. Now you can get oxygen from rain, H2O. You can get oxygen from CO2. Okay? But carbon is coming from your biology. And so if you kill your biology, you are destroying your plant's ability to put yield and mass together.
It's not as much available from the air now since our air is a lot cleaner.
The CO2? The CO2 is coming from our microbes. Okay? And God's really smart. We have lots of zones of air, but CO2 is heavier because there's more on the compound. When we add a carbon to it, okay, the molecular weight of carbon is 12. Okay? We add that to oxygen, and it's heavier than just oxygen by itself. Okay? So when we look at this, these heavier molecules stay down on the ground where the plants are. It wasn't meant to go up in the atmosphere. Okay? It will stay down because that's the plant's need. That's their main food source. And we can't buy that. We have to produce it out of the soil. Okay? So the rest of the stuff is, here again, my big guys are coming from my atmospheric gases through my microbes, 95.5%. Now, what's my other half of 1%? Okay, you guys got them. We started naming them off across the top here. These are my trace elements. And they only are half of 1% of the plant's dry matter weight. But if you have to visualize this, this is the fuel that goes in your tractor. It is not the tractor. But your tractor doesn't work without these. Okay? I get no work out of that 50,000 pound, $400,000 tractor until I put 30 bucks worth of fuel in it. Okay? So you have to look at these guys. Well, how do these guys create fuel? What are they doing to drive this big, massive system? And this is how it works. Okay? Every important aspect of fertility is the balance between elements. Not just the individual elements, but it's the balance. Okay?
Can you explain a nitrogen carbon
Ratio? When you look at balances in your soil, you have a nitrogen to carbon, nitrogen to potassium, nitrogen to phosphate, all of these ratios. And so people want different ratios and balances depending on the crops that you're growing. And so there's ideal ratios of all of this stuff. You can have ratios between any of your minerals, like phosphate to zinc. There's a ratio for that. And I didn't throw them in here, but there's a list for all those. Do you have those, or do you want me to get them for you?
I don't have it, but I thought planes break down that carbon also, doesn't it, so that it becomes available for the...
Let's talk about this. How do we create carbon? What we do is we have plant residue. Okay, so for example, roots. We don't harvest our roots; they stay in the soil. Okay, decompose. Sometimes we have grain straw, we have lentil straw, something from what we grow. Okay, it's mostly carbon. Now, it's also combined with lots of other things, and it's in a gigantic structure. Before another plant can use it, it has to get broken down, taken apart, and put into very small compounds again. And that's what biology does. You don't have the recycling of carbon without microbes. So if you see your straw residue out there in your field year after year after year, we don't have an active biology system decomposing it and transforming it. And you won't be building humus. Okay? It's your microbes that do all this. Okay, again, we think minerals, minerals, minerals. But the life of the soil isn't my mineral content. The life of my soil is the biology. And it's driving everything. It's driving the conversion of my minerals. It's driving the recycling of my minerals. Doesn't matter what form they're in. I can go buy soft rock phosphate, and I've got phosphate and calcium and trace minerals in it. Well, I have the same thing in my plant residue. I have phosphate and calcium, and I have trace minerals. It's got to get broken down and put into another form. And when I can get everything recycling and get moving in the soil, that's when the life comes back. Mike?
Let's say if you go camp follow, no till, and then have a field where you till before you seed or do anything. So, where is it sooner available, all those minerals and microbes, whatever there is, from the residue? Where is it available sooner, on the no-till or the plant land?
I mean, it sounds complicated, but it's very simple. All depends on your biology. All goes back to your microbes. God will never let there be a lot of soluble minerals in any soil, because that is not how nature holds them. Solubility is how nature loses them. The most efficient way to create solubility is taking that which is insoluble and immediately turning it into something soluble and having it taken up by a plant, and there's no waste. That's the most optimal. Now, we can buy nitrogen or liquid phos and put it out, and it's in a more available form. They can use it faster and use it quicker, but again, a microbe has to alter those forms. Again, so another thing that will happen is the efficiency of my NPK is going to depend on my trace elements and my microbes. You can put out tons and tons of phosphate and it won't do anything. Okay? it won't change itself. I have to have the fuel to change that thing. And we're going to talk about this. Right here, all of these minerals, as complicated as this looks, it is, they all have to have each other to work. Okay, now we're going to talk about how minerals work. Okay, calcium will be beneficial to this guy, and it can be antagonistic to this guy. And it can be bad for this guy and good for this guy. I mean, all of them work together and they work against each other.